Okay.
Coach, just given the way that Skyler came in the game when he was called upon and handled that situation with such ease and confidence, is it tough to, now that you face the situation of Alex, Skyler, and Jesse, who you all say could potentially play, and I'm sure you have confidence in all of them, how tough is that situation for you?
Well, that's not tough at all. I mean, if you've got three good players at one position, that's a pretty good deal, I think.
If you would have been told at the start of the season that Skyler was going to manufacture a game-tying drive and then an overtime winning drive in a game this season, what would you have said to that?
Well, I would say, well, I'm probably disappointed because, you know, that means that two quarterbacks ahead of him are not on the field for, you know, for whatever reason. But I wouldn't say that it would have surprised me to say that he is capable of doing that. I mean, that's not a surprise. I think we have an understanding, or have had an understanding, of what he's capable of. And he's, you know, and maybe he's grown beyond some expectations, perhaps. I mean, that's probably fair to say. But yeah, I think he's played very consistently, knock on wood, in the opportunities that he's had. Been very pleased with him.
Hi, Coach. I was just curious, coming off the big win at Texas Tech and knowing there's still plenty to play for, can you give us a sense for the focus and excitement this time, knowing you guys can still go out and fight for what goals you have down the stretch with 3 games to go?
Well, I think the spirit is there. What I'm hoping for is the other word that you use, that we have a good deal of focus, and that they don't lose sight of that. That's the most significant thing for me.
And also, you've typically been good in first and second quarters this season, but it seems, at least production-wise, opponents have gotten the upper hand in the third quarter, running 71 more plays in the third quarter than you guys, and nearly doubling you in total yardage during that particular quarter. Can you put your thumb on why that is, and how important is it to turn that around down the stretch here in the season?
Well, I mean, it is vital. I mean, we've always, stressed emphasis on, trying to be good. We always talk about the first 5 minutes of the third quarter. In other words, coming out of the locker room and being able to maintain, a level of consistency and success. We have probably ended up, not always, but the vast majority of the time, we're on the receiving end of the football, which means we've been fortunate to win more tosses, but by the same token, it still eats up some time. And as you talk about the number of plays, and the yardage goes right along with it, but it's teams make good adjustments at halftime and come out, and we have some difficulty getting them off the field, and consequently, you don't get as many snaps, offensively on the field. But we also, it was like last week, and it's happened more than one time, but to be able to come out and go 3 and out or 4 and out, and then that gives them 2 successive opportunities for drives, and and if they hold the ball a decent amount of time, then you're well through the third quarter. We had somebody, I can't tell you what the time was right now, but at a point in time, I'm sure you'll look this up, but we had only 3 snaps in the third quarter at well into the third quarter of the ball game. So from an offensive standpoint, I mean, so both sides have to play better. That's pretty much that simple, and make better adjustments, for whatever their adjustments are. I mean, that's kind of a feeling out period.
Coach, it looked like you guys tried some different things on the defensive side of the football, pressing up on the corner a little bit. As you mentioned, the third quarter didn't go quite as planned, but overall, even though Shimanek threw for, I think, 405, was this a better defensive effort than what you've seen?
Well, I think the defensive effort was good. I don't like to give up 405 yards, but they got some big plays were a big part of that. I think they had I can't remember what the number is, 4 or 6 plays over 25 yards, and that's where it's matchups as much as anything, and being able to compete for the football, etc. But I think one of the things that and this is a statistical thing, and which don't always lend themselves to winning ball games, but there's an awful lot of yardage eaten up, from their 25 up to our 25 or whatever that distance is, that is concerning, because they converted third down snaps, and in several instances we did a nice job as far as being able to hold them out of the end zone, but and not just this ball game, but previous ball games as well. But the problem is that keeps the offense off of the field for an extended period of time, and it alters the field position dramatically as well. But it's, from a defensive standpoint, it's, big plays were a part of it, but every scoring drive that they had was a 75-yard scoring drive. All came after the offense had scored or come out and kicked off at halftime, and the ball, went in the end zone, brought out to 25, and they were all 75-yard drives, 4 of them. And that's, we've got to do a better job being able to get the brakes put on. I'm a big advocate, as anybody is, of 3 and out, and being able to do that. And you look at those drives. One of them was a big play that they scored in 1 or 2 snaps, and but the others, for the most part, another one was a big play in the running game from 35 yards or so. But then, being able to go 75 yards on 10, I think one of them was 10 snaps, one of them was 11 snaps, something like that. We've just got to be able to get the brakes put on third down. You hold them, put them in third down and 11, third down and 12, and then they're converting those third down plays, and that's hurting us.
You mentioned there the yardage, moving the length of the field and then getting down into the red zone. And after the game, you talked about how difficult it is to stop Tech at the 25 and they need to score.
Yeah.
However, with that offense, that spread offense, is first and goal at the 10, which is always challenging for any offense. Is for a spread offense particularly troublesome because they absolutely can't spread you out the way they like to?
Well, they can still spread you out laterally. They can't spread you out vertically, and there is a defensive advantage in that respect. Most people probably cover about 15 yards of that 20 yards that you're talking about, and don't go any deeper in the end zone maybe than 5. There is. I won't say it's not such an advantage that it automatically keeps people from scoring, but by the same token, it's better than being on the other 25, or it's not as from a defensive standpoint, you have a little bit better chance just to protect 25 yards from that landmark, so to speak. But even at that, as I mentioned after the ball game, I still believe, that Texas Tech has the kind of offense that's very, very capable of, because they're even though they got big throws against us, they don't, they're throwing it me to you most of the time, and so that probably is that field position doesn't really disrupt that type of passing game, I don't think.
Coach, it seems like everybody and their grandma is running the spread or tempo, whatever you want to call it these days. I'm just curious, what is it about the West Virginia variation of that stands out as compared to some of the others?
Well, it's just, I don't think there is a great deal of significant difference from, let's say, West Virginia and Texas Tech. I think they're very similar in what they do, both of them, and Dana's a very bright young coach, and as I believe Cliff is, and I think they've found the need. Both of them, come from those throwing backgrounds and, put the ball in the air an awful lot. And both of them are, ingrained in trying to have balance in their offense. And both of them have done that and have had success doing it. And it just makes it a little bit more difficult for the defense. And I don't think, I think the teams in our conference, we look at the statistics, and yes, everybody's throwing the ball and throwing it well. Look up, the guy we're going to face this week, Greer's, something like 6th or 7th or something in the nation throwing the football, yet he's 4th in our conference. So yes, it says the Big 12 is, throwing the ball all over the place, but everybody's bringing the running game into it. So, they put you in a position where you have to defend both the run and the pass, and that makes you maybe a little less efficient against the pass.
Looking at that, what do you think when you see a 62-52 game?
I think they played well past my bedtime.
You always speak about balance. Where do you think your offense is right now in achieving the balance that you want?
It's not where I would like it to be at all. I think, in some categories we've gotten a little bit closer, even though we're, our completion percentage is not near what, we're accustomed to. And yet in the last couple of ball games that has elevated, a little bit. We haven't thrown for as many yards, but then again, we haven't put the passing game out there as with the number of snaps that we're, accustomed to, I think, or that we want to have. So it's just not having not having the investment in it that we probably really want to have, and that comes from, that's not being negligent. That just comes from, what the need happens to be and what we're capable of doing.
How does playing 3 different quarterbacks play into that too? I mean, has that affected what you can do, and just especially using 2 different guys in the game?
Well, it's not that there is a dramatic difference between the 3, but yes, it does have an impact on what we can do, how we can do it. I think as much as anything. And in some ways that, somebody would look and say, well, do you have to run it more because so-and-so can't throw very well, or whatever the case may be. And it's not that, it's just kind of the, from an execution standpoint, who has maybe a higher degree of capacity in certain areas of execution, between the 3, quarterbacks that you use.
Coach, it seems like the last few weeks Reggie Walker's had more of an impact. How much improvement are you seeing from him right now?
Well, Reggie has put a great deal of, as he does, pretty consistently, a great deal of effort in his, in his pass rush, and that's what shows up for everybody. Is they don't see the other stuff that he does, against the run game, which has been effective. He's done well there. For the most part, but what everybody sees is sacks and tackles for losses and those kind of things. So from a statistical standpoint, he may have a few more of those, but he just plays hard very consistently, I think. That's the way I view him anyway.
Then also we saw defensive end Bronson Massey playing for you on Saturday. What has he done to deserve an opportunity on the field?
Well, Bronson has made, a good deal of progress during the course of the year. He's become a better player. He's a very, very fine athlete. He runs well. He's got good range to him. He can get up in the air. He's changed directions. His suddenness, so to speak, is very positive. It's just making sure that, that he can always get in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and that comes with some experience. And he's gained, more and more of that during the course of the season, whether it be on the practice field and a few snaps on the game field. And now the coaches feel more and more comfortable with him, and so he's getting the opportunity to play a little more.
What is your program's concussion protocol? Can you divulge that or explain that a little bit?
What is the protocol? Well, the protocol is, as far as defining it, is, in the hands of our physicians. And the protocol for recovery or returning to play has been determined by our trainer and our physicians. And they address a number of different things. If they can have, there's oral tests that they have to take and written tests, and once those are graded, if they pass those, and they move into the physical aspect of it. And part of that is getting exercise, putting stress on the body, part of it through running, and we have some machinery that you can run without putting total stress on the body, and then they graduate from that to running on the field, and then they graduate into some drills. And so the protocols written out and well thought through by our trainers and our doctors.
Is there a situation where if you suffer, let's say, more than one in a couple weeks, does that affect things? I'm talking about that.
Well, most certainly. I mean, there's an extended program for someone that were to have, multiple incidents. That the protocol, so to speak, is more. I won't say more defined. It's not any more defined. It's equally as well defined, but it's more prolonged, so to speak. They have to go through a lot more in order to, ever have an opportunity to get back on the field again.
Hey, Coach, so at this point, I guess, who would you anticipate starting at quarterback on Saturday?
You or me?
I'm an option? Good luck.
I'm not sure yet. We've still got a couple days of practice to define, how we want to do that.
If you're put in a situation where it's just Skyler and the other Jesse and Alex aren't able to go, does that at all make you cautious about plays to call, maybe trying to avoid an injury there just because QB depth would be so thin?
Well, I think, if you get thin at any position, whether it's quarterback or any other position, you try not to, whether it's running back or fullback or tight end or receiver, etc. You try to not put them in compromising positions, and we would, if there was a necessity to do that, that's the way we would do it.
I also want to ask about Byron coming off. It seems like he's coming off his best game since the opener with the 2 touchdowns and having the big one in overtime. Just what has he done to move forward and play some of his better football lately?
Well, I think, part of that was in the return game, and they chose to kick the ball to him as opposed to DJ. And so he got, a significant amount of yardage on the return game. And I think he's, he played, I think he's played well most of the time. It's just, he always plays well, and on occasion he'll put the ball on the ground, with the drop. When he does that, then obviously that's what draws more and more attention to him. And he's, if you took it in a percentage of snaps, I think game in and game out his percentage would be high. But it's, if you drop a significant pass, then obviously there's it has a much greater bearing on the game than if you caught a 10-yard pass and made an extra 10 out of it. So I guess the short answer is, I think he's played reasonably well throughout the course. I don't know that he got some recognition for it, but I don't think he did anything that was any different than what he's been able to do from time to time during the course of the season. I haven't seen a great deal of, he's always practices hard, he's focused in practice, and I haven't seen any change in that.
Coach, back here in the back, what are your thoughts on the new Vice 01 helmet, and how do you kind of feel like those were really implemented and kind of made a big change in the game?
I can't hear the question.
Excuse me. How do you feel about the new Vice 01 helmet that your players have? And how do you think that technology is kind of changing the game of football? What are their feedbacks on it?
Well, I don't know if it's changing the game of football. The device, I don't necessarily think is, but I think as we all believe, I think that the game is changing considerably and will even more so. Just the impact that being able to have some type of head injury, which is all over the world. It's affecting the game right now. It affects it at the lowest levels. And of course, I always thought young people were putting pads on a little too soon anyway. But you think about the number of mothers and fathers right now who are saying, my son's not going to play this game, and I understand why. Yeah.
Coach, to follow that up, I guess, are there just a handful of players that are wearing that helmet, or is it team-wide?
It's virtually team-wide. We have some that do not, just because of the way we practice, that it's not an issue.
And Fitz alluded to this earlier. It appeared there were some things you did a little bit different defensively, and one thing that at least appeared to me was that your corners press text wide receivers more than maybe you have throughout the year. There are defensive coordinators who press all the time. There are those that don't. Is it just a philosophical thing, or are there certain instances where you think you should play that kind of defense with the corners?
Well, the latter. I mean, we've done that for a long period of time, and it's just there are situations in the course of a ball game when, if based on statistical analysis, that we feel certain things are going to happen, and to be able to press our corners or do a variety of different things, whether it's pressing corners or something else, that it lends itself towards having greater success in those situations, just based on what someone's tendencies happen to be.
And one last thing on that is I guess the data doesn't say to do it more on a 3rd and 10 type play or a 3rd and 3 type play, especially when you see the offenses like Tech and West Virginia and so forth.
Well, you're getting too technical. You also have to take in consideration, who's going to press who, and if I'm pressing you, then I'll do it all day. If it's somebody else that's, can run a little bit, then I may have to have some concern about that. It just, it kind of depends on a variety of different things. What they do, who they do it with, who you're matched up with. There's a ton of different things that come into play.
You're not saying I'm slow, I hope.
Yes, I am.
Okay. No offense taken.
Coach, your next 3 opponents, your final 3 opponents of the regular season, all currently are nationally ranked. I had asked you a few weeks ago about playing a ranked team, and perhaps numbers don't matter because every team is good in the conference. So I ask you, do you believe that this is the most competitive that the Big 12 has had?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. I'm not sure that, I could say it isn't. But I've always felt that the Big 12 is competitive. It hasn't always necessarily played out like it has this year, where, who knows, what's going to happen on any given week. But it's been, it's been very competitive. You go back and look at scores, and you know, you'll probably do this, and I haven't done that, but, you know, you look over a period of time and, you know, sometimes, you know, certain teams that are expected to win, but sometimes those games are dynamically close. And that happens over and over and over again, and it's happened throughout the years, you know, which is the reason that I have always felt, you know, the competitiveness of the team, you know, pretty much top to bottom, and that hasn't changed, and it's just become a little bit more prolific, I guess. And now some of those close ball games, the tide has turned and gone the other way. So.
If I could ask you, I think since 2011, after the month of October, you were 20-8, and I was wondering in the month of November, what makes K-State a good football team traditionally?
Well, I don't know that I could answer that question. I think, you know, I'd like to think that we are a well-conditioned, you know, football team. I think maybe, you know, sometimes it's because you have good fortune to stay healthy. Yeah, I really couldn't answer the question.
Yeah. Coach, after taking a look at, I'm sure, bunches of film over the last few days, what are your impressions of Will Greer and what he's doing right now?
Well, you know, he's, you know, after having to sit out a year, you know, as a transfer student, you know, it gave him an opportunity to get acclimated to a system, and they have what across the country, maybe not in the conference, but across the country would be considered somewhat of a unique system, and you know, and I think that helped him immensely because he really, you know, started the season off, you know, quite well, and nothing has changed throughout. So, you know, it says A, he's acclimated to the system. B, he's a pretty good athlete and throws the ball extremely well, makes good decisions, and all those things are very, you know, apparent when you know, watch him on tape. You know, he's a guy that, you know, once again, you have to have some, you know, concerns about because he can bring it down and, you know, scramble with it. And they've got not a large number, but a few quarterback run schemes, you know, that they utilize. And he's not, you know, again, he's not one of those guys that'll run around and slide on you. You know, he's, if he needs a yard, he's going to fight to get the yard. So just a pretty good all-around player, and seems like a very competitive young guy. I mean, I don't know him, and you know, just what I've seen on game tape throughout the course of the season is probably the, you know, only thing that I can make my judgment on. But that's kind of the way I see him right now. Yeah.
We got one last question on the list. If your team is down 11 late in the game, is it more important that they have confidence in each other, or the individual want to win?
Well, it's a good question. I think it's you should come more often. You know that. You know, I think it's a combination of both. You know, very much so. I mean, you'd better have the confidence that you can overcome the, you know, the deficit. But also, I mean, to do that, it takes some passion. You know, and I think our players had both. You know, those. I was really, you know, pleased with you know, basically the fourth quarter of the ball game after they scored. I thought our defense did what they had to do. The offense, you know, went the distance to get the field goal and the final touchdown, and you know, and then obviously the play in the overtime. So I thought all three elements of the game were, you know, played inspired, played hard. Played with confidence. At least that's my feeling about it anyway.